Good morning, good evening, rather than all this morning, evening, because Savitha is in US, we are in Australia, and few of you are watching from India, Sri Lanka, all over the globe. So I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today and pay my respect to their elders, past and present. We extend our respect to all the gurus around the globe. I wish you all a happy start of the Lakshmi Puja. As Brinda and Venkata Krishnan said yesterday, wealth is not just money, it's also the basic needs, water, everything. So I wish you all the very best. And my sincere gratitude to Vaibhavi, Deepthi, and Pravina for coordinating the posters and all the IT side. I also, I know all my senior girls or daughters are praying that Akka shouldn't be in tears. I will try my best. I just take this wonderful opportunity to introduce everything, daughter, everything. Jessie. To be genuinely honest, to talk about Jessie, I need many months. But we met back in 2000 when she moved from Darwin to Melbourne to study biomed at University of Monash. As many of you, she also came with full of Natyam knowledge and performing skills. Actually, after learning from a lot of gurus, and including Adya Lakshman sir, I don't know what I shared, but she was everything to me. Of course, as you all know, she has taken part in every BK concert, took the main role, and she didn't stop sharing her knowledge with the other generation. And still to this minute, she's doing it, even though she's a mother of 2 children, working as a recruitment manager at Monash University, while being a backbone to her husband and running their family-owned property business. I'm sure you're already tired hearing about her, right? But to this minute, she's never said no to me. Tirelessly, everything, tirelessly she helped not just the school, but me as well, personally. I'm sorry, Savitha, but I have to say, this is a platform. Everyone tells I'm very confident, strong, and everything, but these are the girls, and Jessie is one of them. When I'm wrong, she says I'm wrong. When I'm right, she spoils me. And at home, we fight to know who is she close to. She's that kind. And, I'll stop here because the rest might be a bit personal, but she's more than a daughter to myself. But I want to take this opportunity to thank Jessie for standing shoulder to shoulder, pushing me beyond my own capabilities, and for me to achieve so much in my life. That's the truth. Namaskaram to Savitha. Jessie been a huge, including myself, Savitha, I will just leave the dice for the girls. Been a big follower of you, and she been following you on Instagram tirelessly, and among your thousands of followers. Thank you, Jessie, for taking me this closer to Savitha. Before handing to Jessie, if I had made any mistakes with my language or words, please excuse me. Over to you, Jessie.
Oh my God, Radhika, I don't know how to follow on from that. Thank you, Radhika. A little bit of what she said is true in that I did come from Darwin, and of course, Akka is my guru, and I'll always say that, but everything else is a little bit of an exaggeration. But moving on, I'd like to give everyone a little brief introduction of Savitha so we understand her background and what we're going to do in the workshop today. I hope you all had an opportunity to watch the YouTube clip of Saffron, which, as I mentioned, has been shortlisted for the New York Short Film Festival, I believe. Is that correct, Savitha?
It's one of the film festivals in the state of New York, yes.
Yes, so that's absolutely incredible that you can join us, you know, after being nominated for such a big event there. So I'll give everyone a short description of your background. I wanted to start off by saying that the dancing storyteller and a Renaissance architect of Bharatanatyam are just only some of the affectionate epithets that have been given to Savitha Akka by the critics and the audiences at large. Savitha Akka has been recognized in the world of Bharatanatyam for her technical prowess over the 3 decades she has been performing. Through the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, she mostly performed traditional repertoires, but she did take steps towards full-length thematic productions through her works such as Krishna, the Supreme Mystic, and Purushatra. It was in the second half of the 2000s that she embarked on projects that showcased novel stories rather than stories taken from mythology or religion, as is common in classical Indian arts. Her first production, Music Within, which released in 2010, took the arts world by quite a storm, based on the history of music as narrated by a deaf and dumb child. The production went on to play across the globe and was much appreciated for its funny, subtlety, and entertainment values. Savitha Akka's foray in this direction stemmed from the fact that she wanted to take Bharatanatyam to an audience that was never conversant nor interested in the art form. In the 2010, Savitha Akka and her husband, A.K. Srikanth, jointly created some of the most memorable works from her production company. Written and directed by Srikanth and choreographed by Savitha Akka, these productions include Soul Cages, The Prophet, and many, many more. Played over 100 shows in very prestigious venues across the Indian subcontinent, United States, Australia, Middle East, South Africa, and Southeast Asia. Her work got the attention of critics, even to prompt them to declare that Savitha Akka is as much the Renaissance architect of Bharatanatyam as Rukmani Devi Arundel was in her times. Her most latest work came about in 2019 through the digital media, where she performed the short dance film, The Descent. Based again on a script written by her husband, the production showcased the free fall of a superstar and showcased the emotions of a depressed woman in this part of her life. The Descent went on to win the Best Short Film Awards in the very prestigious Near Nazareth Festival, the Kolkata International Cult Film Festival, Best Global Shorts, and the Top Short Film Festival, besides being nominated in 11 other film festivals. Savitha Akka and her husband have gone on to make other short films such as The Awakening and Aparajita, the latter being created during lockdown. Their latest project is the trilogy titled The Colours, a series based on the colours of the Indian flag and a comparison of the women today held against the ideals and the founding fathers of India had when they selected these colours of our flag. The first of the trilogy, Colours, Green, was released in critical acclaim in 2020, followed by Colours, White, and Colours, Saffron in 2021, which I actually urge you guys to, if you haven't already, to please watch. And Savitha Akka is also extremely involved with the group she has created for dancers titled The Inner Circle, where she posts videos on choreography, productions, and physical fitness for dancers. And with that, no further ado, I'd like to hand it over to you, Akka, to please continue and embark us on this journey with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that really glowing introduction. The heart that you bring, Ratika, is just very touching. It's just beautiful to see the relationship that you clearly have fostered with probably not just Jessie as the little window that I got to see, but perhaps with the entire community of dancers, not just your own students, but all across Melbourne and perhaps even all across Australia. It is my privilege, my pleasure, my honor to be part of this community, and thank you for giving me this. And without the topic for today, that when Jessie came to me and she approached me for a segment of what I do, which is related to technique, I offered to speak about dance in the digital era, because this was something that that I got into long before the pandemic, long before the world was exposed to the new normal, as it's often mentioned. So before the pandemic, we went digital. Post-pandemic, it's fashionable to call the digital world, the digital era, the new normal. And when you look at dance and how dance will probably shape up in the future, I don't believe that is going to be so. And people will return to stage. And to me, the reason for going digital was not because of a lack of options. I went digital for a different reason. And the move to digital happened even before the pandemic, as I said. So what was the reason? The reason was that the reach of the digital medium is something that I could only wish as a stage artist to be able to have that kind of reach, which to me, when I performed in any auditorium, and on an average, say there were 400 to 500 in a large auditorium coming out to see me, how many shows would I need to do before I got my milestones of the first 1,000 or the 5,000 or 10,000? It would be a lot, many more than if I were to put up that same work on the digital media and get that in a matter of few hours. So this was something that I realized even before all of this, before the pandemic, and therefore that was really the motivation for putting up my work. Originally, that was supposed to be an archival of many of the stage shows that we had done, and eventually, somewhere along the way, it was in fact in a workshop like this that a student threw a gauntlet at us, asking if we could do, a production that was a lot less than the 1 hour and odd minutes of dance films that I was archiving. And the gauntlet was, could you tell a story in, say, 10 minutes? So Descent evolved out of that challenge, out of one of those workshops, and the thought process behind it was really that. So what I think my role has been over the stage shows of departing away from traditional Bharatanatyam. The Margam is what I refer to as a traditional form of Bharatanatyam, and moving into a storytelling modality was really to evangelize Bharatanatyam. I wanted to take it to people that don't normally engage with this art form. This was not to be a dance for dancers. This is really, in my outlook, a way to take an art form to people that would not normally engage with it. Hence, whether things open or not, I am going to stay in the digital era, in the digital realm, because that allows me to take my work to the maximum number of people in the shortest amount of time. Now, at the very outset, I want to tell you that I'm not talking about Instagram. I'm not talking about Facebook. I'm not talking about social media as my digital platform. I'm talking about the dance films, serious work that you get taken seriously for in not just in the world that is populated by dancers, but the dance films need to have a much larger reach be it for consumption by anyone that would watch films or in film festivals. This is not just something that I do for awards, right? That is not the goal of it. It's nice to get them and nice to see that the films are getting that recognition, but it is for really to take it to people that would say, I don't know if I want to watch Bharatanatyam. I mean, it might not be my cup of tea, and I want to break that stereotype of what Bharatanatyam is and who watches Bharatanatyam. So why is digital important? Now, the lingering question is, if you're a digital artist, how do you get your audience to take you seriously? Because there is that preconceived notion that, you know, just like you have auto-tune for musicians, that you know, you can get on behind the camera and with enough retakes or with enough you know, graphics and whatever else, CG and so on, you could make a dancer look good, right? Bollywood has done that to several of its heroines, where they might not be the best of dancers, but there is a way to rig it so that they come off looking like they can dance really well, right? So how do you, as an artist, get taken seriously if dance films are what you do? Well, the answer is that you really need the stage background. I'm not suggesting that people walk away directly from you know, learning this art form into the digital media. The pathway that I've taken of getting my validation on stage, I had decades of stage experience before I decided to go into the film, and that, I think, gives enough depth to your art in several ways that I'll talk about a little later as well. But it also gives you the validation for having journeyed and making that graph of acceptance, and then getting into a field where there's always that slight raised eyebrows. Well, she only does dance films. I mean, can she really dance, right? And it answers that, yes, I was a stage artist and I am doing dance films now. I don't dance on stage anymore because this is the work that consumes me completely. So what you know, there is, as I said, no substitute for performance on a stage. And in the difference between stage and a film is on stage, there is really no opportunity for a retake, is there? You just need to get it right the first time around. Now, who should be looking at moving to film? Are you the candidate that should be looking at film? Well, one is that you would have had to journey through stage, right? Having gotten your first footing and a firm footing on stage. After that, you have to also be able to take the rigors of filming itself. And what do I mean by that? For taking the rigors of filming, it's sort of like, can you be a doctor who studied medicine through Wikipedia? That would make a very poor doctor, right? On film, singers who auto-tune don't last. Likewise, dancers who wing it will not be able to last. To make a lasting impression, it is really important to get it right, get it consistently right every time you are in front of the camera. Now, that means you have to be ready to give perfect shots. Most of my films, there's rarely an opportunity for a retake. Often we're out on location, which means we're filming based on the sun. There's just that one take. I would say 99% of the time, I don't review my shots. There is a monitor, but I personally find that it just distracts me from my centeredness if I have to keep going and checking on how the previous shot was, which often happens in a Bollywood situation, right? Since I'm the choreographer and the dancer, there is no third person there, or even a second person who's looking at me giving any sort of feedback. So my feedback comes from my own estimate of how I danced. And that takes practice, a lot of practice, till you feel that you can deliver perfect shots and not watch a monitor, and still, and basically what a monitor is, they will replay the shot for you. So say you did, a certain section of dance, then they have the ability, and this gets checked every shot, because there could be some random thing in the background, or there might be a light that's off. So every shot gets checked before it's okayed by the DOP, the director of photography. So you as a dancer choreographer would ordinarily participate in that process, which I don't. As I said, I find that it draws me away from my center of being a performer. So I'm sort of just in the zone and I want to just dance. That whole distraction, I'm not able to go through. So which means there's that added onus on you to deliver. What are you delivering? The consistency between shot to shot. There's I think about 47 frames to each second of footage of film. So if you deliver something one time and then they have to match that to the next shot, your movement has to be so precise, because when they cut from one to the next, the movements have to match. So your integrity of movement has to be so on the dot. If your hand is here the first time when you did it, it has to be exactly there. So you're talking about microseconds of when you listen to the music, when you moved, all of those on point, on register. So dancing to film has a different kind of rigor that you really need to practice for. It's precision, it's transition, it's everything. Every side of your face, of your body. I mean, if you look at Saffron, there are times when the camera is overhead. You're looking at Natya Rambam in angles that you don't even correct, right? Because there's a camera standing right above me shooting my Natya Rambam, which I've never seen. I have no idea what this looks like from that degree, right? So there's 360 degrees that you're being captured. And so again, the geometry of this art form, and Bharatanatyam is a subtle art form, right? So it's not Kathak, it's not hip hop. So there's a subtlety, and the beauty of it is in its geometry, right? So you really need to train that in the principles of what Bharatanatyam is to such a degree for film, a lot less forgiving than stage. If you're dancing on film, also remember that they can flick you off with just one stroke of the thumb, right? Because you have so much on your little gadget that all it takes is a lapse and you're gone, your history from that person who's viewing you, right? So on stage, what happens is that you've been invited into somebody's show and there's a warming up and you're probably going to stay for the large part of that show. So you've already been sold on giving your time to that artist, and you're not just going to move in a flash. So to me, as I said, I'm not dancing just for dancers, because that to me is like if you were to buy a gold-plated Rolls Royce and just drive it to your nearest supermarket. Why would you do that, right? That doesn't make any sense. So what I mean by that is that digital productions, because of the cost associated with it, they are a lot more expensive to produce, right? A stage show is not that expensive. However, you have the advantage that once it's documented, it's there for posterity. So it's on film for the rest of your life. It's there for eternity, even after you. So in a sense, I think if you're an artist, there might be, for some of us, that sense that we left something behind that has outlived our own lifetime. So for that reason, film is definitely more advantageous. If you are deciding on film as your calling, then the other thing is that you will not be able to just present a margam, right? You need to change the format. The margam is a stage presentation. It does not hold the interest. A 1 hour margam show is only for dancers. And I said this before, is if you're dancing for dancers, then why even film? And I say that only because the cost is so excessive. You could just be recording it and putting it on YouTube. And we're not talking about that kind of production, right? So that's like just taking a stage production and just filming it and putting it as is on YouTube is not a digital production. Digital production is what I define as a dance film, is what I'm talking about. So the format needs to change. And what I'm doing here is to just tick some boxes so that you can make a choice whether this world is for you or maybe it's not. And that's perfectly fine. If you ticked all of these boxes and you think that, okay, I think I'm ready for this world of dance films, then how you engage with your audience is the next section that I really want to go through. How do you become more engaging while shooting? So now let's get into the story itself. The content is, to me, in my opinion, the most pivotal thing that everything centers around, the story. If you look at what has lasted through time in the field of entertainment, whether whether the pandemic happened or whatever in history the world has coursed through, cinema has outlived everything, right? There isn't, well, sure, we are now moved on to OTT platforms, but cinema by itself hasn't gone away. We might not be going to theaters, but there is some form of cinema that is in our lives that has managed to capture our attention as human population that art hasn't, dance hasn't. We have to figure out ways of keeping dance alive during the pandemic. Cinema figured it out, and very easily. So how does dance and song feature in Indian cinema? Let's look at it. That's the way that Indians tell stories. And even looking back at our own our ways of telling stories, Vedic, pre-Vedic, Kadakala Chepams, there's always been song associated with telling stories. And the numbers, the dance numbers, the item numbers, call it what you may, have always been a large part of the Bollywood culture. So it's nothing unusual for dance to be a center of a film. So when I have dance films of using classical dance, it used to be the center of how stories were told during the times of Padmini and Kumari Kamala and all these Vaijantimala at one point of time, and we sort of stepped away from it, probably not to the degree that I performed in terms of just really classical dance, but it was still a large part of how South Indian films were, and we sort of walked away from that. So you can make films with dance being a part of it, but the story passages through everything. The story is the overarching domain, and everything else is a subset of that. So even the dance that I do is passaging story at every point. There is not a movement that I'm not thinking about the story. So that really is the crux of what I want to teach today. How do you take something like Nritta and imagine and envision how to passage story through it, right? Because that is a question that often comes out, is do you just use expression? Expression in dance, to me, abhinaya, is fine, but the minute you add gestures, right? Whatever you speak that is easy to understand is fine. But if you start speaking with your hands that have higher meanings and more language-oriented gestures, then it becomes just, as alien as using, say, German or French or some other language. So you're again creating a barrier between you and the average audience. And I don't mean average as an average intelligence, and I mean only in terms of whether they have been exposed to Bharatanatyam before or not, right? So that is my only yardstick that I'm using to differentiate audiences. So my average audience, I assume, has not really engaged with Bharatanatyam before, right? So when you take it to such an audience, it's important that you remove the barriers of understanding as much as possible, so they can sit back and really enjoy the whole experience. You don't want them to go through a translation. I don't want them to feel like they're watching a foreign film every time they watch something I do, right? They shouldn't need to read subtitles, because this is dance. This is music. It's supposed to be beyond language, right? So the way to remove language from it is to also reduce the gestural language as much as possible. That is also a language, right? So if you start speaking all in mudras, then it's not very clear what what you're trying to say, even though it might be in your mind. So you have to keep that very clear. Now, let's take an example from one of my films, and let's come back to this idea again. Now, I will use, and you have to help me with whether you can hear this clearly. So I'm going to use an example of one of my films from White. And I'm going to have you participate. So if you're, Jessie, help me here. Are students ready to dance and participate while we're doing this?
Yes, so they're all aware that this was going to have some form of practical side to it.
Okay, good.
So yes, they're prepared.
They're prepared, because we are going to do that. And that's what the larger part of the rest of the half an hour that I've kept it for. A little bit of a demo, and then we'll get into the practice of it with them. So I'm just gonna take the music for the White. I'm just gonna play the audio, and you can tell me if you hear it clearly. Sorry, excuse me, I just have to connect my Bluetooth. Give me a quick moment.
Sure.
Jessie, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear this clearly? Okay. So in White, I'm going to show you the traditional section. So there is this character who courses through different phases of dance, because it's sort of biographical. It's my story. So I started out as a traditional dancer, and it is a story of how I've evolved, some of the challenges I had to go through, both from what I was dealing with in the external world, and also what I was dealing with in my internal world, to change into the dancer that I am today. To walk away from traditional dance is not easy. It's not something that just happens overnight, and White is my story. So I'm just going to start with the traditional section. I'm going to do that only because I want to, sort of contrast what happens after that. And I want you to just watch, just take it in for a bit. I'll do a small section, and then I'll move on to how you change that in a dance film when you're talking of an evolution of a character, right?
When every word I had to say till it became a rep.
Sorry to interrupt, Savitha.
Yeah.
The camera, are you able to tilt it up just a little bit so we can see your face, because the camera is sitting just under, yeah.
Is this better?
I think so. Because when you start walking back, the camera sort of stops around here. Yes, perfect. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm visible till about here. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. And then I kind of cut off from here.
That's not bad either. Just a little bit of your forehead has been cut off a little bit.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Thank you.
The amazing wall of sound, enveloping me by its opaqueness, leaving me in a box of my own creation. And yet, in that box of my own making,
it could have been taken out of the books of any jati, right? So now this character, sorry. So this character progresses through several stages where she is now in a box that has been created, from ascending to a point where her fame has soared. And now she finds that the very expectation that she has created out of dancing in this way has made her only produce works, pieces that track her to feeling more and more of the same tradition that she's that she's performing, is making her feel this is not the world that she wants to be in. Something about it is not resonating. But then how does she get out of this is the story, the rest of the story. And the third piece is what I really want to move on to in this.
it floated on a little more.
So,
My hero.
So the third piece has a very interesting background music, which has the story of Gandhari. So it's a layered, it's very layered in its approach. What I mean by this, there's the story of the Queen Gandhari from Mahabharata. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Gandhari blindfolded herself for her king, Dhritarashtra, who was blind. And in order for her to see the world, she felt might have been not something that gave her the joy, after realizing that he was not going to be able to participate in that same kind of processing of what this visual world was. So in our take of what Gandhari became for us is a symbol where her own she was boxed into this role of of offering her own eyes, and when society praised her for it, extolled her as Pativrata, Pavitra, Papamukta. So just as this character you saw, she became famous for her traditional dancing, right? So she's boxed herself into that. So if she wants to step out, how does she do it? When the very fame that she has created becomes the box. So for Gandhari, who knows what went through her mind? Perhaps in the long journey of blindfolding herself. And remember, this is these are eyes that I'm not sure whether she she had that one human point where she went, oh God, I wish I hadn't, I wish I could see where I was going. She actually had that choice, right? So here she's boxed herself in. So the words are Pativrata, Pavitra, Papa, Mukta. All of these are just words that say what a wonderful woman she is, without any sin, without without being tainted in any form, the purest Pativrata, the one who is most devoted to her husband. So why did I choose that? This was written for this particular, for white, and it's sort of ironical, right? So the whole piece is an irony. I'm not going to be saying Pativrata, Pavitra in the form of Abhinaya, but what I instead used is this mudra. Certainly, this is fairly well known. If you look at even Buddha, this is not very unfamiliar to the world, that this means peace maybe, or shanti, or there's some kind of recognition of this from the, just knowing the statue of Buddha. So this to me is all of those, purity, being above reproach. So I've used this extensively, this mudra extensively. I've also used the idea of lamps. So if you were to look at that particular piece, it's surrounded by light. And to me, all of that is actually taking away the real part of what she's feeling. What she's feeling is a darkness embodied, sort of like just a rolling darkness that's just coming into her life from being captured in the spot that she can't move. So let's look at the movement.
And 4. Large images, but visible to more than just a few as lived outside my hearing.
So let me take apart that movement for you. So this mudra gets dually used to both convey the idea of purity and also to show the idea of the the North Star. So it says that you, Gandhari, are like the North Star, showing the path for all womanhood, right? Remember, this is ironical, right? So the idea of the dance here, to me, is, in a sense, it is that quest to somehow find the purity in her own self, for accepting who she is. She sees the duality, that she's not able to follow what everyone is asking her to do, which is follow tradition. However, how does she remain that prima donna, that dancer, if she is not true to herself? So you seek something that you latch onto. So she's hanging on to these symbols of purity, like the lamp, like the idea of, setting all those lamps around her. So maybe some of that glow will rub off on her, and she can feel emboldened by that, right? Sort of a reflected glow. But she knows that in her heart, all of this is meaningless. This fame is meaningless because she's not true to who she is, right? So the whole dance, every movement is constructed with the idea of that character of who she is in the place that she is. So the dance moves the story, is what I want you to start realizing, okay? I don't have, unfortunately, all the time to go over every movement in it, but every one of my dances, I reflect very deeply on how is this telling the story. So I had given a homework assignment to some of you, and so now we're going to look at simple movements. So this is the time that I want you to participate. And so let's take a simple Mishram movement and see how can you tell a story with one Tapita Takadi, right? We're not using Abhinaya, we're not using hand gestures, we're just using whole body language and Nritta to communicate a feel, presence, right? So I had a particular piece of music in Mishram. You can choose a piece of music that makes sense to you for an emotion. And there's nothing like, having some music that will give you inspiration, because that is the second subset. Once you have your story in place, the next is to have the right music. And the third is the dance. And that's the sort of order in which I go about doing things. I'm going to just take out this piece of music that is in Mishram. And I'm going to show you and I'm going to have you participate with me. So this was the movement, I believe. I'm going to tell you who created this. Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think
Sure.
This is Nitusha. Is that how you say her name?
Nidusha, yes.
Nidusha, okay. So Nidusha did a Mishram movement that was sent to me by video. And I'm just gonna, you hear? Okay, so Nidusha, if you're here, I'm gonna use your movement as an example. So she did something like this. Ta, ki, ta. Ta, ta, din, me. Okay, so a movement like that, how do you take something like that and make a story out of it, right? Every movement needs to passage a story. So in this Mishram piece, I want you to think of a person who has risen above revenge. So a lot of us get very bogged down by things that are very negative. And revenge is a negative energy that sucks the life out of you, right? Because you are only processing everything that somebody did wrong to you. So this is a person who's just beginning to get out of that whole loop of feeling victim, being the victim. So that is what I want you to capture in this Mishram now. How do you take this and still create that sense is the question. Because if you were to just execute it as this doesn't really tell a story, does it, by itself? So I'm just going to play that music for a little bit of background.
I emerged from the train. Art gave me something else back.
So here you have the seed of the idea was Nitusha's completely, yes. What I just made on the go. I had just seen her video. You could give me movements, which is why I was looking for students. Like I can take movements from students and create and show you how to convert movements on the go, which is the whole purpose of it, right? So, excuse me. Why does this movement tell a story? Let's consider that. I'm not very good at trying to analyze it too much. I leave it to the audience. Most of what I do, what I choreograph, I leave for the audience to appreciate and understand in their own ways. But what you need to think about as a dancer when you create movements is something that I can speak about because I internalize it, I go through it. I'll do a couple of more movements and I'll see maybe you can find out, you can spot some differences. But before I do that, can you guys try this one? What element did I bring in? Clearly, I brought in a lot of body movement into it, right? So there is a lot more of the body moving in ways that allow me to access the emotional quotient of the dance. And that is what I call dancing. So often we get so bogged down by technique, we forget to dance, right? So don't forget to dance. And that dance is what I'm allowing access. When I have mastered technique, that is the only time that dance can supersede technique. If you're worried about where is my hand, and this is interesting because in all of the body movements that I did, go back and review the video if you like, it's on YouTube. My hands would have never dropped, right? So I'll show you the difference. So if I did something like this, where my hands dropped, even if I throw my body into it, it's just not going to have that same effect, right? As opposed to this. These are movements that look and feel very big, but they're not big. They're very centered. They're what I would say, every part of your body needs to know how to keep the center of gravity. It's a kind of new way of looking at dance for Bharatanatyam dancers, I think. It's like, where is your center of gravity? And find out with every part of your body. And what some of the rules of dance that we often hear about, don't drop that elbow. Keep the hands up high, all very old, beautiful rules allow you to access that place, right? So it's a sort of understanding that you have to force your body through to know where that center is. And and extend that range continuously. And if you look at, it's on YouTube, so go back and look at it anytime you want. That's digital media for you, right? If you look at what I did on my right versus what I did on my left, it might not be exactly the same in timing in any part of it. Now that transition, if I were to practice this movement for a dance film, I will practice it 1,000,000 times. That little switch from this to that back on film, it'll capture every nuance. There's one small, in saffron, I do one thing, and please try it with me, right? So the movement is, you step with your right leg, back leg is extended, make a large step, you come down to your hand, and you go back up. This movement, the transition has to be so exact. Film will find the slightest forward movement that you do as a compensation, it'll capture that. Okay, so transitions have to be practiced, reworked to a degree that you never do if you're dancing on stage, because on stage it'll be a flash, it's gone. Before even somebody, sees you moving from right to left, you've gone through so many transitions. But on film, you have the rewind button, you have the slow motion button. So you really need to, and then you have the cut to cut. Remember I told you, so many frames per second, you have to be able to match them. So your degree of precision needs to be very high. Now let's look at what somebody else, the next person sent me. I'm just going to quickly, I think it's Kirtana. Okay, so she has a movement that sort of looks like this. Thank you, Kirtana. So your Mishram was something like ta, ki, ta, ta. I think she did ta, ta, dhi, ni. Or it could have been this. Forgive me. Learning from virtual sources is always interesting when you're doing left, right. So I completely understand. If you're doing the opposite of what I'm doing, that's fine. So let's see how I would take that movement and put it in this little song that we just spoke about. So the movement went from being just technique, where I'm looking at, is my Natya correct? When I'm here, is my elbow dropping? Technique, right? Check all the boxes first. Without technique, there's no taking it forward. So once you get technique, then your body can go places with that center of gravity a lot more freely, right? So it doesn't have to be restricted. Sorry, just a warm day in California today. Inside. So when you learned this Adavar, You have learned that the body bend is only that. But you can progress it. When you want to tell a story with that movement, it can be a lot more.
Station that was above revenge, above love, above hatred. What was this?
Are you able to see some storytelling through the dance?
Absolutely,
Yes.
Yaka. It's incredible. I think we're just all in shock watching you dance. It's amazing how you converted an adava, simple adava, what we would say, you know, as your basics, into something that's something really spectacular, just like that. So I think we're all sort of amazed with what you can do. All this time, I feel we, like you said, we've been sort of boxed and thinking that, okay, this is it. These are the movements, and you have to stay within those parameters. And I think you've shown us a whole new world that we can explore, but still keeping that innate, that structure, the technique, and all those things that you spoke about. I've actually got quite a number of questions that have been coming to me through the chat on Zoom, but I thought I might start off with one in particular, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And it's from Nandini, who is one of our most senior dancers, and she's asked us, do you feel you're able to direct the audience attention to specific details better on film? For example, focusing on eye movements or a certain hand or foot movement, because of the way videography has that ability to focus? And does that help you to better convey the story?
So it's interesting, right? So when I choreograph, the answer is no. I'm never thinking about what is this going to do on film. Interestingly, what I think about when I'm choreographing is not what it looks like, but instead, what is it allowing me to access for this point in the music? How am I connecting completely, and is the visual registry of it the same as what I'm feeling here? That's really what I'm looking for. How it gets captured on film, the way I look at it, is not even my job. I know the choreographers in the Bollywood industry might be getting in on the technical details of it, but very rarely do I say, other than saying, oh, I'm doing an angular movement. This angle of the movement looks good from this direction rather than the other direction. But at times my DOP has gone ahead and done exactly the opposite. And I look at it on film and he just smiles and he says, give me an opportunity. I'll take it from that angle also. But let's see what happens if you cover your face with part of the mudra. It might not, we are trained as dancers to think that, that if I do a side angle, it has to be shot from here, from this side, so that you can see the diagonal. But what happens if you switch it off and you actually block part of my face with my mudra, which, I think he's done in colors green. So it has a beautiful effect. So I sort of defer all of those judgments of what part of me to capture to the DOP, because he's really looking at it from a different perspective. And I'm only looking at, here's the story, here's the music. I need to feel the visual matching what I'm feeling here. And if it doesn't, I'm working and reworking it till what I'm feeling is what the visual matches to be. And that really is how I work. So what you see here, if I were to actually incorporate this into a choreography, it will go through weeks and weeks of refinement before it makes it onto film. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I believe Radhika has a question as well for
Sure.
you.
Thank you, Jessie. Savitha, just wondering, like, okay, now we're in this, naturally we are in digital world, as it's just naturally came with the pandemic, right? So the where we practice or where we do all this shooting and stuff become very smaller, right? Because we are frame conscious at the moment. So when you're going back to the full stage, right? How do you think it's going to impact our connection with the audiences, or what you mentioned just now, like just dancing, not focusing on the techniques, because stage management also becomes a technique, right?
Yes.
But how is there any tips that you could give us or share with us when especially for us in Melbourne, once this pandemic's over, we'll be on the stage mainly, yeah? Is there any tips that you could share with us as students?
See, I think if you look at what I think the digital world or our brief foray into the world of, what I would like to think is more ruled by the OTTs and platforms that have are kings at it, and we've sort of found ourselves head to head with them, really, because we are vying for that same digital time, aren't we? When we are putting up content. So I think in a sense, it's actually up the game. If you're not upping your game, you're out. Nobody's giving you more than a like. And likes are like this. If you're looking for just likes, then this is not about that. You're deluding yourself with having got the validation. So what it has told us is that we need to up our game to hold attention. So if you walked away with that, and in what sense of that holding attention are you able to bring into your art form without feeling like you've really wandered away from it is the question that you need to ask. Does it mean that you need to look at content as as the mode for where you can make the easiest place to make shifts is content, because you already have a form. It's, yes, I have departed from where the boxes are, where the lines are, and I've sort of gone into where technique can go, but it's only because the content and the music has afforded me that luxury. So maybe you can revisit what it is that, and also we've, I think, come out of it with a lot of changes in our own perceptions of the human world, the empathy, all of those things have affected us profoundly, and to maybe have your art in some way reflect not the pandemic, but then just something that is more here and now than something that was there a long time ago that we don't even know of except by hearsay from pieces being handed down to us. So I think those are probably the broad guidelines. The minutiae of it and the execution, of course, I think that will only be will get better with maybe bringing in some digital elements or some part of the digital connection back into the real world of stage. That's going to happen eventually anyways. Yeah.
Can I ask one last question from Deepthi, who actually also sent a video, I think, of the multiple videos that you got today.
Yeah, I'm happy to end with that after your question.
Sure. And so she's asking, so coming out of the boundaries of Bharatanatyam, does the digital dance platform have its own boundaries? What's your views on that?
Absolutely. The form itself in some ways is a boundary, isn't it? And the story, it's not that I can take any story and say it through Bharatanatyam. It has, I would feel very strange, for instance, doing computer or phone. These are not, this is not something that I can just throw into dance. And if the theme is is still centered around human emotions, I think Bharatanatyam works beautifully. If it speaks about passage of, what we course through, it's already inbuilt for that. But if it has complexities that are very vast, and you need more than dance, maybe you need a very large production. So there are some stories that just don't fit the simple telling that you can with just the subtleties of dance. So you do need to evaluate your story very carefully. I think a lot of the boxes lie there. There is also, in the digital world, you can go so digital that you lose the dance, that the special effects and all of that start superseding the dance itself. That is one thing that you need to caution yourself, that you don't allow your camera angles to get so critical and important that it supersedes everything, even content. So you have to have a centeredness about the story at all times. I think that's what gives the grounding, and let everything else be a subset of that.
Thank you so much. Radhika, shall we just do the last little bit before we finish up? Is that
Sorry,
okay?
I'm looking at the time. I'm already over. So you tell me.
We couldn't stop you.
Yes.
No, whatever you feel is right, Jessie.
Yeah, I think because Deepti put in a bit of effort putting that video together, so I think she'd love to see your version or your take on what she's done.
Absolutely. I'm just going to take a quick look at it. Okay, I'm just going to look at our two versions and combine it. Okay. All right.
And we're also fascinated with your choreography. Sorry to interrupt, but we're also fascinated with your choreography. So I think it's very useful for all of us to take on.
Yeah, well, this is a very short session. As I said, we could do a whole session on just taking units that students give me, and then we can have a dialogue on how to build with that.
Yes.
For another day.
Yes, absolutely. I'll take you up on that offer.
Yeah. So what she sent me, and please forgive me, it's again, the right left is very confusing on video, but it kind of goes like this. It goes ki, ka. I think she's got ta, ka, di, mi. Something like that as her first movement. Ta, ki, ta, ta, ka, di, mi. And then as her second movement, she has ta, ki, ta, ta, ka, di, mi. I think some movement of this nature. So I'll see what I can put together. So that would be sort of the direction I would go on. Obviously, it needs more layers and reworking, but it gives you an idea of what I think of when I hear the music and I have a seed of a movement in me. Yes.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much, Savitha. I feel really like to stop here is, you know, I think everyone is feeling a little bit like, oh, can we keep going? I've been getting messages going, can we extend it a little bit longer? But unfortunately, due to the timing of multiple other things as well, we do have to wrap it up. Thank you so much. You've really dedicated your time today, and I can't believe you're missing your son's engagement for us. It's such an honor to have you. I think words are not enough to express our gratitude. So we really sincerely hope that we are able to join you again, maybe for another session. We would love that. I think we all would. Obviously, if time permits, we know you're, you know, super busy, but really appreciate the time and effort that you've put in to help us today. Learn so much. Thank you so much.
I found your secret recipe for your energy, Savitha. It's your dedication. Hats off. That's it. I mean, I learned it. Missing your sons and with all your other things, you still, you know, like dedication is your recipe. That's it. Full stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Loved being a part of your presentation. Just love the videos. Thank you to Deepthi, Nitusha, and Kirtana for inspiring me to do this little presentation, and look forward to seeing more of your students in the future. Maybe they will continue my work and take it to places that I couldn't myself.
That would definitely be an honor. Thank you so much, Savitha. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.